What if I told you that Egypt wasn't its real name? That long before it became a land of pyramids and pharaohs, it was called Kemet, the Black Land, a name born not from sand, but from skin, a civilization carved by African hands whose story was rewritten by empires that came long after its glory had faded. They told you Egypt was separate from Africa. But what if that was the first great lie in human history? Stay with me, because today we'll uncover the truth they tried to hide. Welcome back to History Echoes. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and join our journey, because every week we bring forgotten African empires back to life. Before it was Egypt, before the Greeks set foot on its golden sands, this land called itself Kemet, the Black Land, a name whispered by farmers along the Nile after the annual flood, when dark, fertile soil returned to feed their people. But Black Land meant more than the earth. It was an identity. It honored the color of the soil, yes, but it also honored the color of the hands that shaped it, the people who were its lifeblood. Then came the travelers, traders from the Aegean, explorers from the Mediterranean. They heard the word KMT and tried to shape it through their own tongue. To them it became Egyptos, and with a single mistranslation, the story began to drift away from Africa. When foreign empires arrived, Greek, Roman, Arab, they didn't just rename the land. They reframed it. They wrote new legends that suited their vision of civilization. In their scrolls, the kings and queens of Kemet were given pale faces, its builders recast as outsiders, its heart silenced beneath layers of foreign ink. Bit by bit, the image of Kemet darkened, not in hue, but in memory. The Nubians, the southern neighbors who shared blood and culture, were forgotten. The connection to the lands beyond the cataracts erased. To say Egypt was African became a whisper, an inconvenience. But history leaves fingerprints. Every stone along the Nile still carries the language of its people. Every temple wall still sings the word Kemet, the Black Land. Names hold power, and sometimes reclaiming a name is the first act of remembering who you truly are. History leaves trails, and Kemet's trail leads south. Every monument, every royal tomb, every buried relic points toward Nubia, the cradle beyond the first cataract. Long before Egypt's first pharaohs wore crowns of gold, Nubia's kings ruled with the same double crown, the same symbols of divine power. Their temples, carved into rock, mirror the ones later found in Kemet. Their art, their burial rituals, their gods, all flowed northward like the Nile itself. Coincidence? History says no. Archaeologists uncovered tombs in Kostal, modern-day Sudan, predating Egypt's first dynasty. Inside were incense burners marked with the image of a king wearing the white crown of Upper Egypt, centuries before Egypt's own kings appeared. Proof that the first blueprint of Egyptian royalty came not from the north, but from deep within Africa's heart. Even science confirms what walls and words have whispered for ages. The DNA of royal mummies reveals sub-Saharan lineage, genetic ties to the south, not to Europe, not to the Levant. Their bloodlines flowed from the same river valleys that birthed Nubia, Kush, and lands beyond. But such truth was inconvenient. For textbooks written under colonial eyes, truth was something to be trimmed, reshaped, or quietly omitted. Museums displayed the treasures, but erased the hands that made them. Western scholars painted the past in their own likeness. And so a false image of Egypt was born, a version where Africa was the audience, not the architect. For centuries that illusion stood unchallenged. In classrooms and documentaries, in every film that turned brown skin pale and black kings invisible. But time has a way of speaking back. New discoveries rise from the sand, whispering the same story. Kemet was never an outsider to Africa. It was Africa. And once truth begins to echo, it cannot be buried again. You can silence voices, but not the stones they carved. You can rewrite the books, but not the DNA of kings. For thousands of years, they tried to erase the roots. But Kemet's roots run too deep, and their echoes have found us again. Look closely at the faces. Not the modern paintings, not the museum replicas, the originals. The statues that time itself could not erase. Full lips, broad noses, coiled and braided hair, all carved in sacred stone thousands of years ago. These weren't artistic guesses. They were portraits of the people who built eternity with their bare hands. Compare them to Africa's oldest tribes today, in Sudan and Ethiopia, in West Africa's heartlands. You'll see the same lines, the same expressions, the same royal dignity. Art doesn't lie. You can repaint a picture, but you cannot change the artist's hand. On temple walls in Luxor and Thebes, the skin tones of the ancient Kentu, the black ones, were painted deep brown, rich and warm like the soil of the Nile. They celebrated harvests beneath the golden sun, offered prayers to Re, and honored their ancestors through rhythm and dance. These were not shadows of another race. They were Africa's own reflection, illuminated by divine light. But centuries later, something changed. When history was rewritten in foreign tongues, the faces began to fade. Textbooks turned dark skin into bronze. Documentaries bleached the murals. Films recast pharaohs with pale actors, rewriting beauty in their own image. Even museum exhibits today soften the truth, lighting adjusted, pigments corrected, as if Africa's greatness needed to be filtered to be believed. But truth has patience. For centuries it slept beneath sand and shadow, waiting for those who would look, really look, and recognize their ancestors staring back. Every stone holds a confession. Every carving is a memory etched in eternity. And now those memories are speaking again. Because no empire, no textbook, no movie can silence the evidence carved in stone. You can bury a name, but not its spirit. You can rewrite the books, but not the faces of the builders who shaped the world. Stone remembers what history forgets, and now it is remembering out loud. Kemet never truly vanished. Its temples may have crumbled, its language may have faded, but its heartbeat still pulses through Africa's soil. You can hear it in the rhythm of the gem in West Africa, echoing the same ceremonial beats once played for the gods of the Nile. You can see it in the architecture of ancient Nubia and later kingdoms. Massive walls, sun-aligned shrines, and sacred geometry that mirror Egypt's temples. Even the crowns of African rulers, from Mali's Mansa Musa to Benin's Obas, carry the same divine symbolism. Power rooted in spiritual balance, leadership bound to divine purpose. When the Greeks studied philosophy, they came to Kemet. When the Romans sought medicine, they learned from Kemet's scrolls. And when invaders carried those teachings away, Africa still held the originals, written in spirit, not ink. From Ethiopia's ancient script, Ge'ez, to the Dogon's sacred star knowledge in Mali, to the Yoruba understanding of divinity and balance, all trace their light back to that same eternal flame. They tried to erase her, to redraw maps, rename gods, repaint faces. But truth has its own gravity. It always finds its way back home. And today, across the continent, artists, scholars, and storytellers are reclaiming her voice, relearning her language, rebuilding her temples through art, research, and pride. Because Kemet was never just a kingdom. It was a seed, and that seed lives in every African heartbeat that refuses to forget. This is Kemet, the African empire ancient history tried to hide. But her story breathes again through us, and her echo will never fade. If stories like this move you, don't let them be forgotten. Subscribe and let history echo again.